Okay, I'm going to get started by welcoming all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see everyone. Sawadee Krap. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. Today is what we call our Pali Canon and English study group, which I'll explain to you guys what that is a little bit later. This individual that we refer to as the Buddha, he actually attained enlightenment. What enlightenment is where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you no longer experience any discontent feelings. You will have been able to train your mind to get to the point where you no longer experience anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings can be eliminated from the mind through training of the mind. Oftentimes people think that it's the outside world that's causing these feelings. You might think it's your mom and dad that are making you angry, or your brothers and sisters are frustrating you, or maybe your boss is annoying you. This isn't actually true. It's one's own mind that's actually causing these feelings. This is why you can actually eliminate them, because the mind is actually causing them. If it was the outside world that was causing these feelings, you'd never actually be able to eliminate them. So one of the things that the Buddha did, among other things, in order to train his mind to get to enlightenment is meditation. So we start each one of our classes with meditation. I'm going to guide you in a breathing mindfulness meditation session. This is a primary form of training in addition to other techniques that the Buddha used in order to train his mind to get to this enlightened mental state. So if you'd like to join for meditation, the way that I start this is with some chanting to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. If you'd like to see these chants and maybe even chant along, there's chanting sheets over there on the cabinet. You're welcome to help yourself and get a chanting sheet. You're welcome to chant along. For those of you guys that are online, you'll find this on our website at buddhadailywisdom.com. You can click on free books and you can scroll down towards the bottom and you'll see the chanting sheet there. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory, that every 2 weeks his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally, because everything he taught was oral. So they used chanting as a learning tool or as a learning device to help commit the teachings to their memory. So every 2 weeks they would recite his teachings orally. So you can see from the origins of chanting that this isn't a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer, or anything like this. Instead, it's just to help the students to be able to remember the teachings during the lifetime of the Buddha, where today we use it as a way to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. Because we have books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, ways like this to be able to actually study the teachings that weren't available during the lifetime of the Buddha. So if you'd like to chant along, you'll definitely see more benefit as you ease the mind into meditation, because it kind of exercises the mind and prepares the mind for meditation. If you read the English translations, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of this, I don't think the Buddha even created these chants. They were probably created by his students either during his life or after his death, because a Buddha wouldn't go around and say, here, chant these chants to me out of respect for me. This would be ego or arrogance if somebody did this. And by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have this ego where you consider yourself to be above people, but you also don't put yourself below people either. So the Buddha wouldn't have created these chants himself. But if you learn from a teacher how to move from anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other feelings to the peace and joy that is enlightenment, and this teacher didn't want anything or expect anything from you, you'd probably have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too. So that's why I think that these actually came from his students. So I'm going to be chanting these on the way in to help ease the mind into meditation. Then when we're in the meditation, I'm going to be providing you some guidance where I'm essentially going to be teaching you and instructing you how to meditate while we're actually meditating together. Then there's going to be a period of time of quietness where we're just all meditating at the same time. Here at the temple, and everyone who's joining us online, we'll just all be meditating at the same time. Now, during this period of time of quietness, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds. You might hear a car go by, a dog barking, a bird chirping. This is all normal. If you're in meditation and you have a craving for permanent silence, when you hear a sound, you will cause your mind to be annoyed or frustrated. It's not the outside world that's causing that. It's the mind craving permanence when you live in an impermanent world. Things are going to be constantly changing in the world around you. You're not going to be able to meditate in a situation where things are completely quiet all the time. So you're going to hear occasional sounds. Those sounds are going to arise, they're going to change, they're going to fade away. Someone here might even cough or sneeze. This is all normal. And you can be in meditation understanding that this is exactly the way the world works, that things are impermanent, constantly changing. They're arising, changing, and fading away. That way you can reside with peace and joy during your meditation. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting, and then that's where I'll start today's class, helping you guys to understand what the Pali Canon and English study group is. In terms of your body position for meditation, the Buddha taught 4 positions: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would learn these different positions at different times because it's kind of like having a tool belt and using these different tools at different times that you might need those in your journey to enlightenment. So we have various courses and retreats that are going to help you to be able to learn those different positions. But today, I'll just give you guys a little bit of guidance on the seated position because oftentimes that's how people are learning. What I'm going to share with you are just some recommendations or some suggestions that you can consider, because there's not just one way to sit. You can sit however you're comfortable. That the things that I'm going to share with you are just recommendations to help you find something that's even more comfortable than what you're already experiencing. You can use whatever I describe, but you could also use something that you come up with on your own, because there's not just one way to sit. Because if there was, that would be permanence, where in reality, the world is full of impermanence. All of our bodies are different, and we're going to find different things to be comfortable. It's important that the body is comfortable, not painful and not luxurious, but instead that it's comfortable. So here are some suggestions for you to consider. If you're on the floor, in a chair, on a bench, or a sofa, or a wheelchair, you can really sit however you like. But if you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This will kind of help soften your seat. And if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross-leg position, you might just decide to do that lightly, because if they're real tight, it can impede the circulation and cause pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets your hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, allowing the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left and his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But again, it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. There's other options here. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. In terms of anybody who's in a chair or on a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair, you can also sit however you like. Sometimes people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me sitting here in a chair with my legs crossed, so this is an option for you as well. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. In terms of your upper body, it's helpful if this is erect. With the sternum up and the shoulders back, it'll help keep your mind attentive and alert during the meditation, because this is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. So you'd like the mind to be attentive and alert during this meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be erect with the sternum up and the shoulders back, and that'll help keep the mind attentive and alert, as well as make it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to do this chanting to ease us into the meditation. You guys are welcome to join in, and then I'm going to come back in with the guidance afterwards. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตวามนุสรังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, Cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Wat Tung Mahakawanang Apiwa Teami Sawakato Mahakawata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso emakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokawitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusrang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to everyone. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. This individual that we refer to as the Buddha, over 2,500 years ago, he figured out how to get to enlightenment. Enlightenment is this mental state where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you no longer experience any discontent feelings. You will have eliminated all your anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings in others can be eliminated from the mind through removing the causes and conditions that are producing them. This meditation is an important part of that, but there's other aspects of the path as well. Sometimes people think the Buddha sat under a tree, he meditated, and then instantly got to enlightenment. This isn't actually true. It was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that led to the Buddha experiencing this enlightened mental state. He says it in his own words when you study his own teachings, that it wasn't instantaneous that he got to enlightenment. So there's a whole path that he describes of how to get to enlightenment. He essentially figured out how to eliminate certain pollutions in the mind. He figured out that there's these 10 individual pollutions in the mind, and then he figured out the tools and the techniques to uproot them and eliminate them out of the mind. And when you do, you'll experience not only the peace and the joy and the elimination of discontentedness, but you'll notice that the mind's focused, that you have concentration, clarity, and deep memory. You'll notice that your personal, professional relationships are really blossoming because you don't have bitterness and harshness and hostility in your mind anymore. anymore. That bitterness and harshness and hostility is actually coming from your own mind. Oftentimes people think that it's other people who are causing these things to occur, but it's actually coming from your own mind, and you can uproot that and eliminate it. You can actually get to the point where you don't even have a bad mood any longer, that it's physically impossible for you to experience a bad mood. So the teachings of the Buddha, they're not about believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. That's not what he taught. He also didn't teach rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and prayer. He didn't teach any of those kinds of things. So if you see those kinds of things attributed to the teachings of the Buddha, those are gross misunderstandings of his teachings. Instead, he's teaching you to do this inner work, this inner growth, this inner development of becoming a better and better human being. He taught this better way of life. So one way you might think about the teachings of the Buddha is like a self-help program, that you're gradually working and developing your mind, uprooting these pollutions. Essentially, a teacher is like a tour guide, kind of helping you understand the things that you need to learn and practice in order to experience enlightenment. But it's each individual practitioner who's choosing to do that work. So an individual who's learning on this path, they're not a devotee or a follower or anything like that. They are an independent practitioner looking to acquire wisdom about the world around them, because the Buddha taught these natural laws of existence. He helped you to be able to understand how the world truly functions. Because when you live in a world that you don't understand, you will struggle and you'll have difficulties. That's the stress and the anxiety, the frustration and agitation and all those other feelings. It's showing you that your mind is not yet awake. When we say awake, what that means is to cultivate wisdom, that you need to cultivate wisdom about the world around you. Because just like when we didn't understand the natural law of gravity, we struggled and have difficulties, we fell down, we hurt ourselves, we broke our toys, there's other natural laws that are affecting you as well. And if you don't understand those natural laws and how the world is truly constructed, you'll struggle and have difficulties in that world. But just like the natural law of gravity, it was affecting us whether we were aware of it or not, the same thing is true with these other natural laws. They're affecting you whether you're aware of it or not. And when we gained wisdom of that natural law of gravity, we started making wiser decisions, and now we don't struggle with that natural law of gravity anymore. We never believed in the natural law of gravity. We could see the truth for ourselves. We can see it right there, right? We never believing in the natural law of gravity, but we can see it for ourselves. And now we might say that we've awoken, or we have awakened to the natural law of gravity, meaning we fully cultivated wisdom about this natural law. And that's why we can ride bicycles, we can climb ladders, we can get on airplanes and fly all over the world, because we fully awoke. We have wisdom of this natural law of gravity. So these other natural laws that the Buddha taught, the mind lacking wisdom of these natural laws, you'll go out onto the world thinking what you're doing is all the best things in the world, and things can just blow up on you. You don't even realize that what's going on, because you're being experienced, you're being affected by this natural law, and the mind just doesn't have the wisdom of this natural law. And oftentimes what the mind does when you're experiencing anger and frustration and sadness and all these other discontent feelings is the mind will tend to blame it on other people. You might be doing this where the mind firmly believes that it's your mom and dad that are making you angry, or it's your brothers and sisters that are frustrating you, or it's your boss that's annoying you. It's actually your own mind that's causing these feelings, and you can actually see this truth for yourself. What the Buddha figured out is that the mind craves permanence, that the mind is longing, yearning. It's chasing after the objects of its affection. And if it gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. And if the mind doesn't get what it wants, it gets painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. So you can see this for yourself, that your mind is essentially chasing and chasing and chasing and chasing. It's almost like the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. So the mind pulls towards the objects of its affection. The mind feels those painful feelings, thinking that it's something external that's causing these feelings. So the mind will tend to push people away. You might have done this where you've pushed your friends or family members away, thinking that that was going to solve your problem. This is the mind's aversion, where it's pushing people or it's pushing a situation away. But you can see that this hasn't solved the problem, because you still get angry, you still get frustrated, you still get annoyed. Or the second thing the mind will do when it firmly believes the problem is external is you might be bitter and harsh and hostile to people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal. And that's not actually truly what's going to fix the problem, because being bitter and harsh and hostile to people is just damaging your relationships, and you can't live harmoniously with all people around you. Or the third thing you'll do is you'll tend to put your expectations on people and try to control people and pressure people to do things your way. And as long as the mind's doing this, you can't ever get to complete peace and complete joy. So with that craving, desire, attachment in the mind, if the mind gets what it wants, it gets happy and excited, those pleasant feelings. And if it doesn't get what it wants, it gets those painful feelings. So the mind's holding on. So for example, because remember, you can't believe what I'm teaching you. You need to be able to independently verify it for yourself. For example, if you get really happy and excited when it's sunny outside, when it's raining, you'll get sad and frustrated. Or if you get really excited when your bank account balance is up here, when it goes down here, you'll get frustrated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling. Or if mom and dad or brothers and sisters or grandma and grandpa are alive, you'll be really happy about that. But then when they die, you'll be sad or grieving or sorrowful. It's not the love that's causing that. All that's happened here is change. But the mind craves permanence, not realizing that it lives in an impermanent world. So for example, if you got a brand new car and you drove it to the store and you came out and you saw a scratch on your car, you might be annoyed or frustrated or angry. It's not the scratch that's causing that. And it's not the person who scratched your car. What's causing the mind to be frustrated or annoyed is the mind is craving permanence. And when it's experiencing this impermanence, the mind doesn't like it. So the mind is craving for this car to look permanently beautiful, when it's not possible for this car to look permanently beautiful. Now, we're not talking about what's wise or unwise here, because when we walk through a parking lot, of course, we aspire not to scratch anybody's car. But the fact is that this car is going to get a scratch. It's only a matter of time. And if your mind craves permanence, when you see that, you're going to get angry or frustrated. Maybe the paint fades, or the tires need to be changed, or the upholstery gets ripped and torn. And when you're craving permanence, but yet you're experiencing impermanence, the mind doesn't like this. So don't believe what I'm sharing with you. Use an example from your own life so you can see this for yourself. Take a recent situation where you've been angry or sad or frustrated or annoyed. It could have been this morning or yesterday or last week. Look at that situation with these fresh eyes, because at that time you might have been trying to blame somebody else. That's what the mind usually does. But look at that situation. What was it that you were longing, yearning for? You were craving, you were wanting and expecting this thing. And if you would have got it, you would have been happy. But because the mind didn't get what it wanted, it was angry or frustrated. Maybe you showed up to the airport so excited to go to Thailand. And then when you showed up, your plane was delayed, or it might have been canceled. And you might have been frustrated or angry. Maybe you were blaming the airline company. That's not what caused the anger. It was the mind craving permanence. I want every single airplane to take off on time, right? Especially the ones that you're on, right? And it's just not possible, because there's going to be a maintenance issue. There's going to be a crew issue. There's going to be a weather issue. This is just impermanence, constant change. The world is constantly changing. You can see we started out with a certain number of students when we first started, and then more people came. That's impermanence. And now maybe some people start to leave, right? This is just change. Whereas if you crave permanence while you live in an impermanent world, you can never be happy permanently. Because if you base your happiness on the sun is not permanent. When it changes, you're not going to be happy any longer. Or if you get really happy when your bank account balance is up here, you can't be happy permanently, because as soon as it changes, you'll be frustrated or annoyed. So what this meditation is doing, this breathing mindfulness meditation, is it's training your mind to let go. Because that's what the mind doesn't know how to do in the unenlightened state, is it holds on and holds on and holds on. It craves permanence, wanting things to be permanent, not realizing that it lives in an impermanent world. You can see this if you've ever had a boyfriend or girlfriend, that when you guys first got together, you might have been so happy and excited when you guys first got together. Maybe you were having great conversations. Maybe you were going to the movies or dinner. Maybe you were having intimate contact with each other. Maybe you're having all these pleasant feelings around this new person showing you affection. But over time, the relationship deteriorated and you guys broke up. And then you might have been sad or angry or lonely or bored or missing this person. This is because the mind's holding on and craving permanence, wanting this person to be in your life permanently, when in reality, from the very beginning of this relationship, it was always going to end someday. Even if you guys were together for the rest of your life, more likely than not, one of you would have died first. So this relationship was going to come to an end. And when you were holding on and craving for it to be permanent, when it was over, the mind didn't like that. And it was holding on and holding on and holding on. And you might have been angry or frustrated or lonely, bored, or missing this person for a period of time. But at some point, your mind let go. You were like, you know what? If he wants to be with somebody else, so be it. And you let go. And that's where your peace and your joy came back. Or if she wants to move to another part of the world, so be it. And your mind let go. And that's where your peace and your joy came back. But your mind in the unenlightened state doesn't know how to let go. So this meditation is like exercising the mind, training it to let go. So in meditation, you're cutting off everything and anything that's coming up because you're training your mind to let go. So if you had lots and lots of thoughts, or if you had a thought and you indulged in that thought and followed it for a period of time, this is normal in the unenlightened state, but you can train your mind to let go. When your mind's focused on the breath and it moves off the breath, that's your mindfulness or your awareness of mind. You're aware that the mind moved off the breath. And when you cut that off and let it go, it's training your mind to let go. And now you come back to the breath and you train your mind to be focused and concentrated. Even an enlightened being will have thoughts during their meditation. So the goal of this meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. It's to notice them sooner and sooner and cut them off and let them go easier and easier. But the difference is, as an enlightened being, when they have a thought, they're going to notice it right away and let it go right away. And there's this quietness and this stillness in between their thoughts, where again, you might have had a bombardment of thoughts, or you might have indulged in a thought and followed it for a period of time. So the meditation is training your mind to let go, but there's also other techniques that the Buddha taught as well to train the mind to let go. One of the things that he taught is generosity, where you're giving and sharing with the people around you, because with craving, desire, attachment in your mind, you'll become quite selfish. It's like my money, my car, my house, my phone, everything's mine, 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 mine. You might have been taught to share when you were a child. We were typically taught to share our toys, but we weren't taught why. The reason why is because when you hold on and you crave permanence, you can only be happy when you get what you want. So when you have that toy to yourself, you're happy. But when it breaks, you're sad or frustrated because the mind doesn't understand impermanence and it craves permanence. When our parents gave us chocolate and ice cream, each day they gave us chocolate and ice cream, boy, were we happy. That was the best day ever, right? But then someday came around and we're like, Mommy, Daddy, can we have chocolate and ice cream? And they said, no. You're the worst mommy and daddy ever, right? This is what the mind thinks. Well, the mind's just having painful feelings because it's not getting what it wants, what it's longing, yearning for. So you need to be able to see this for yourself so you can have this breakthrough to understanding what's causing these feelings. Because as long as you go around the world thinking and believing that it's other people that are causing these feelings, you'll never actually see the truth and cultivate wisdom to be able to see it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Because once you're able to see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, then you can implement the solutions and you can actually fix it. So the Buddha teaches this whole eightfold path, these 8 individual factors that you learn and understand and practice on a daily basis that gradually trains the mind to get to this point where it's experiencing more and more peace, more and more joy. And you'll know that this is occurring because you know situations where you're once angry and sad and frustrated, and you'll be in those same situations and your mind's not experiencing that anymore. So you'll know that it's these teachings that are actually leading to the development of the mind. So I have all these different programs here to be able to help students to be able to learn and practice the teachings. You can learn here in Chiang Mai. You can learn online because we live stream our classes. We record them on our YouTube video, on YouTube channel, our Facebook group, on our podcast. We have books, audiobooks. We give it away all for free to be able to help you guys to be able to understand this path. Even personal guidance and courses and retreats. You can attend any and all of this stuff at no cost. So usually I teach in a traditional method where I'm teaching for like 15, 20, 30 minutes. I open up for questions. Then I teach another 15, 20, 30 minutes and I open up for questions. You'll see that in our various programs. On Sundays and Wednesdays, we have something called the group learning program, where each Sunday I go chapter by chapter in this first book. It's called Developing a Life life practice, the path that leads to enlightenment. And we're coming to the end of this program. Tomorrow, there's going to be a class on frequently asked questions about the teachings of the Buddha. You guys are welcome to attend that if you like. On Wednesdays, we do meditation, and I open up to questions. So you guys are welcome to come here, and you'll be able to learn over the next few days as you're in Chiang Mai, and even when you travel, you can tune into live classes and things like that. In this group learning program on Sundays and Wednesdays, it's actually restarting from the very beginning on January 4th. So a lot of people like to join at the beginning. You don't have to join at the beginning, but there's an opportunity for you to do that. And you can get this book from our website for free. You can download it for free. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can order it on Amazon. And then we have various courses and retreats throughout the month that are like week-long courses and retreats that you can actually learn in those as well, either here or online. In this particular program on Saturdays, it's called the Pali Canon and English Study Group. I teach it a little bit different. It's more of a study group versus the traditional style of learning, but it's an important part of learning and practicing the teachings is to be able to study with the original words of the Buddha. What the Pali Canon is 45 volumes of books that are about this thick. This is the largest, most complete collection that we have of the teachings of the Buddha. And in this book series, it's been consolidated into 13 books so that you can see what did the Buddha actually teach about the path to enlightenment through his own words. But then you don't believe those teachings. You actually learn them, investigate and examine them. You reflect on them to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you practice those teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life. And we're coming to the end of this program too, and we're going to be restarting it on January 10th. Right now, we're in volume 13, and the way that I do this program is I invite students here and in Zoom to be able to read the words of the Buddha. And you can see here, this is about a half a page, this particular chapter, and it's teaching a topic about generosity, because all the way at the end of this program, the very last book is called Generosity, because the Buddha taught to give and share with the people around you because it trains your mind to let go. And after somebody reads this chapter, then I will share some teachings on that, and then I'm going to open up to any and all questions that you have, whether you're here at the temple or you're online. So if you'd like to volunteer to read or you have questions here at the temple, we have microphones in the white bowl in the middle of the room. Just come get a microphone, take it back to your seat. You can press the gray button. You're going to see the lights come on, and then you just hold it up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online, so it'll really help if you use a microphone. And then you can keep these microphones with you because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share it with them. And if you're not using it, if you could turn it off, that'll be helpful so we don't get any feedback through the speakers. And then for anybody who's online, if you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, and you like to ask questions, you can you can put your questions in the comment section, and we'll be able to see that and answer your question. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions that you like. So I'll show you guys how this study group works. Would somebody like to volunteer to read this first chapter? Looks like Joe's going to volunteer. Sometimes people are shy, right? That's what the unenlightened mind does. It thinks that, oh, I'm shy. I don't want to talk. But actually, if you put your mind in that situation, you can overcome that challenge, and you'll see that your mind can eliminate that shyness. So I don't think Joe's shy. Let's see.
Chapter 61, Persons who are gifts. Fifth discourse, monks possessing 6 qualities. A monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What 6? The faculty of confidence, the faculty of energy, the faculty of mindfulness, the faculty of concentration, the faculty of wisdom, and with the destruction of the taints, he has realized for himself, with the direct knowledge, experience in this very life, the taintless liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, and having entered upon it, he resides in it. Possessing these 6 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So, as I mentioned, the Buddha teaches generosity in order to help train your mind to let go. And you're going to need to practice generosity in many different directions. One of the directions that you might choose to practice generosity towards is ordained practitioners or teachers or temples to be able to help them share the teachings of the Buddha. Because while people share the teachings at no cost, it does cost, a certain amount of resources to be able to share the teachings like electric, water, things like this. But nonetheless, the Buddha teaches you to practice generosity. For example, if you got your clothes out of your washing machine and you saw they're ripped and torn and you got angry and frustrated about that, that's your mind craving permanence. You want these clothes to be permanent when they're actually not permanent. They are impermanent. And one of the things that you can do is, of course, the breathing mindfulness meditation to train your mind to let go. And there's other teachings as well. But you can train your mind through generosity. If you start giving and sharing your clothes, start giving away some of your clothes, it'll actually train your mind to let go, where you don't crave for them to be permanent. Or if you're noticing when your bank account balance is up here, you're really happy. And when it goes down here, you're sad or frustrated. You might decide to start making some charitable offerings to various places in order to be able to train your mind to let go. Or notice maybe when you are misplacing your jewelry and you can't find your jewelry, maybe your mind is all shaken up by that and your mind is unstable and unsteady. This is because your mind's craving for it to be permanent, when in reality it's not permanent. So maybe once you find some of your jewelry, you might start to decide to share it with other people. Whether you give it away if it's maybe not that expensive, or maybe if it's expensive, you just let people use it for a period of time or keep it at their house, maybe some trusted friends or family members or something like this. This will train your mind to let go. So you're going to need to practice generosity with the people around you. Practicing generosity is to give and share more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return. Sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources, right? So you can be sharing in all parts of your life. Just like your meditation practice should be a daily practice, your practice of generosity should be daily too. And you can integrate it into your life in ways that it's not so impactful. Like, let's just say you're walking into a store and you're getting ready to open the door and you're going to help people behind you to be able to go into the store, right? This is generosity because you're giving and sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources. But you need to be sure you're doing this without any expectation of anything in return. Because if you're standing there holding the door, expecting them to say thank you, and they don't say thank you, you'll be frustrated. You'll be annoyed. Maybe you experience that. That's your own mind that's causing that. The mind is craving for everybody who walks through this door to say thank you, right? Maybe when you walk through the door, you say thank you, but other people don't. They don't even see you standing there. Maybe their mind is so caught up into what they need out of the store, they don't even see you standing there. So if you have a craving for permanence, or you have an expectation of you want something from this person as you're holding this door, now you're setting yourself up for discontentedness. You're sabotaging your mind, where you could be standing there holding the door, realizing there's only one reason to practice generosity. That one reason to practice generosity is to enhance the quality of your mind. That by you practicing giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return, it's going to enhance the quality of your mind because it's training your mind to let go. So if you're practicing generosity, you can integrate it into your life in these kinds of ways. You can hold doors for people. Maybe if you're at the market buying some mangoes, if you know that your neighbor likes bananas, you can toss those in there. It takes you an extra minute to do that. And now you can share it with your neighbor. Or maybe you're going to the store to buy yourself a chocolate bar. Maybe you buy 1 or 2 extra chocolate bars. Maybe you don't even know who you're going to give this chocolate bar to. But at some point during your day, you're going to encounter somebody. You're going to be like, here's a chocolate bar for you. And you give and you share with the people around you. So this is a general practice of generosity. But whenever you're practicing generosity to help other people get access to the teachings of the Buddha, this is called merit. And the Buddha taught that it would be wise to be able to give and share with people that are sharing his teachings, because this allows the teachings to continue in the world. It's important to understand that the individual that we refer to as the Buddha, he was a prince destined to become a king. He was rich and wealthy. His father was the king. He was the next in line to become the king. But he actually stepped down and away from that life. Because oftentimes when you see teachings like this, where maybe a teacher is teaching you to give offerings to them, you might think, oh, they're trying to enrich themselves. Especially if you've seen those kinds of things today in today's society, where people are using teachings like this to maybe enrich themselves. Well, the Buddha himself was already rich. He was a prince destined to become a king. He walked away from that life. He went into a life of homelessness. He was teaching generosity because he understood that it was important for him to practice generosity in order to be able to get to enlightenment. He practiced an extensive amount of generosity, so he knew that that was also important for his students too. So that's why he practiced generosity, and that's why he taught to practice generosity. So whether someone chooses to practice generosity or not, it's a choice for them to make, but you will see that it enhances the quality of your mind. So maybe you decide to help out a teacher or an ordained practitioner or a temple or somebody like this to be able to share the teachings of the Buddha. But whenever the Buddha was teaching to make offerings to these types of people, he often prefaced it with things like this. You're going to see a whole series of discourses here where the Buddha is talking about the type of individual to make an offering to. That because during his lifetime, there were countless people that were learning and practicing his teachings, but not everybody was practicing them very closely. And he was interested in making sure his students understood that you would be wise to practice generosity and support the individual teachers who were practicing the teachings closely. So during the lifetime of the Buddha, there's going to be a core group of people around that person who's practicing the teachings closely, but then there's going to be people in the outer fringes that aren't practicing the teachings very closely. And the Buddha knew this during his lifetime, so he encouraged his students to make offerings to the people who are practicing the teachings very closely, because that would ensure that people could get access to the wisdom that it takes for them to be able to get to enlightenment. So this is just one discourse of many where he's giving you some indications of what to look for in terms of practicing and providing offerings to someone that's going to be able to then use that offering to be able to sustain their life, but then also share teachings with other people to help them get to enlightenment. He's talking about the faculty of confidence, energy, mindfulness, concentration, wisdom. And then he talks about some other things here too. This faculty of confidence is that whenever he talks about confidence, he means confidence in him, his teachings, the community, your teacher, and your own ability to get to enlightenment. Because when you have doubt in the mind, this will actually hinder you from being able to get to enlightenment. If you doubt the Buddha, if you doubt his teachings, if you doubt the community that you're part of, if you doubt your teacher, and if you doubt your own ability to get to enlightenment, you will have a certain amount of complacency in your mind and a lack of interest to actually move forward on the path to enlightenment. But you don't get rid of this doubt through blind belief or faith or anything like that. The way you get rid of your doubt is through investigation and examination of the teachings. When you start investigating and examining the teachings, you don't believe them, but you examine them. You reflect on them to independently verify whether they're true or false, and then you practice his teachings. Slowly but surely, you'll see the condition of the mind and the condition of your life gradually improving. So you'll see this confidence in your mind improving, and the doubt is shrinking. So for an individual who has confidence in the teachings of the Buddha, they've practiced to a certain degree that they've seen a certain amount of progress in their day-to-day life, in the way that their mind functions and the way that they interact in the world. So the Buddha is saying, look for an individual who has confidence in his teachings, because this individual would have practiced them very closely. Because if you investigate and examine these teachings close enough, you'll see that they work with 100% certainty. You will see that they actually work. But if you haven't dove into them deep enough and you haven't practiced them deep enough, you won't have that confidence. So that's why he's encouraging people to look for someone with confidence. The faculty of energy is somebody who has vitality and vigor, who has initiative, a willingness to do something. Whereas if you're really dull and lethargic and complacent, that's the mind being on one side. But also if you're chasing, that's the mind being on the completely opposite side. The Buddha is teaching you to come to the middle, where you have ambition and enthusiasm and motivation, where you have dedication and diligence to move forward in your life and apply all the various wise decision making that you're going to need in order to improve your life. So if somebody's dull and lethargic or lazy, they're all the way over here on the other side. But if they're also over here chasing, they're over there, right? So the Buddha teaches you to come to the middle, where you practice what's called the enlightenment factor of energy, where you have vitality and vigor and initiative, motivation and enthusiasm to move forward in your life, based in wise decision making, not based in chasing, but also not over here where you're dull and lethargic. Mindfulness is awareness of mind. Sometimes people use this word in modern language in a way that it's not intended to be used by the Buddha. But if other people use it in different ways, that's up to them. We're not here to change other people or convince other people to do things a certain way. But if you're interested in how the Buddha used this word, he used it as awareness of mind. You're going to need to have awareness of your thoughts and ideas, your feelings, your emotions. You're going to need to be aware of these kinds of things in order to be able to transform your mind. Because in the unenlightened state, we typically walk through life not really being aware of what's going on in our mind. Oftentimes what people will say is, they will say, can you mindfully carry this glass of water to that table? What they're really doing is they're just replacing the word careful with mindful. And that's not what the Buddha is actually talking about. He's talking about having awareness of mind. But more specifically, it's something called the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which you can learn at another time if you like, or you can ask me questions about it. So having someone that has mindfulness means that they're aware of their mind and what's going on in their mind, right? So that's something you can look for in terms of an individual who you might be interested in practicing generosity with for the continuation of the teachings of the Buddha, because that person would have practiced the teachings to a certain degree to develop their mindfulness and their awareness of mind. Then there's the faculty of concentration, which is focus and clarity. An individual who's practiced to a certain degree would have focus and concentration and clarity. And then there would be wisdom. Wisdom is deeply understanding the teachings, because in order to be able to understand the teachings, you would need to be able to practice the teachings. So an individual who has wisdom about the teachings would be able to easily practice the teachings, but they'd also be able to easily share the teachings in discourses and resources and things of that nature. So these are the 5 things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that the Buddha is talking about here. But then he goes into, with the destruction of the taints. What the destruction of the taints is that those pollutions, the Buddha discovered these 10 individual pollutions in the mind, that an individual who's gotten to enlightenment would have destroyed the pollutions, or we might say uprooted the pollutions, or eradicated the pollutions, or eliminated them out of the mind. So some people refer to them as taints, some people call them pollutions. The more direct way that the Buddha referred to them is the 10 fetters. A fetter is, during the lifetime of the Buddha, a shackle and a chain and a ball, that this is how they would keep people in a confined area. So today, if we had criminals that we were trying to keep in a confined area, we would just put them in a prison cell or in a jail cell. Where during the lifetime of the Buddha, they would attach a shackle and a chain and a ball around this person's ankle. And now they would just kind of stay in this field. So when the Buddha discovered these 10 individual pollutions in the mind, he referred to them as fetters, because it keeps the mind trapped in this unenlightened state. And then sometimes he refers to them as taints or pollutions. And what you're doing on the path to enlightenment is you're looking to uproot these pollutions out of the mind. And that's where the mind is actually experiencing enlightenment. So he's saying, looking for this person that has destroyed the taints. What he's talking about here is someone who's enlightened, that by the time that they've destroyed the taints, they've actually got to enlightenment. And that's what he's describing here. He's saying he has realized for himself, with the direct knowledge or experience in this very life, the taintless liberation of mind. The mind is purified through training of the mind, and the mind is liberated, meaning it's free. Because when you're experiencing stress and anger, sadness, and these other feelings, the mind is not free. It's bound up, and it's experiencing complications and difficulties. There's guilt and shame and fear in the mind, but you can free the mind of that. And that's what he's calling the taintless liberation of mind, that the mind's been purified, it doesn't have those pollutions, and now the mind is actually free. And it's been liberated by wisdom. That's why there's no belief on the teachings of the Buddha or the path to enlightenment, that you need to actually cultivate wisdom to understand what are these 10 pollutions? How do you eliminate them out of the mind? What are the tools and techniques to do that? And you need to be able to cultivate that wisdom. You don't just believe that. Instead, you learn it, examine it, you reflect on it to independently verify it, and you practice to be able to train your mind to be able to see how to do that. And that's what liberation by wisdom is. And then having entered upon it, he resides in it. He's talking about the enlightened mental state here, that when your mind enters into this enlightened mental state, your mind now resides in that enlightened mental state. It's a permanent mental state that your mind will experience for the rest of this life. So this is the 6 qualities that he's recommending for an individual to be able to possess in order for an individual to then practice generosity in terms of ordained practitioners or teachers or something like this. And whether somebody ever chooses to practice generosity, it's a choice for them to make. You should see that a teacher has no expectation of their students to actually practice generosity with them. They should be willing to give and share the teachings to be able to help their students without any expectation of anything in return. But oftentimes when a student gets to a certain development in their mind and they see that the teachings are actually working to improve the condition of their mind in their life, they would like to see other people get access to those teachings. So that's where people might decide to start practicing the giving and sharing of generosity in order to help other people get access to the teachings. And this is just one discourse where the Buddha is describing the type of individual that you might look for. And what he's describing here is an enlightened being. That's what he's describing. But he also talks in other discourses where there's other types of beings that you might decide to support. So sometimes when people learn the teachings of the Buddha, they will learn one discourse like this, and they will just kind of isolate on that particular discourse, where you need to not look at the teachings of the Buddha in isolation, but you need to look at them in the totality. So you can see that there's multiple discourses that he's teaching on one particular topic. So this isn't the only 6 qualities that the Buddha recommends for somebody to possess in order to be able to practice generosity with them, but this is certain 6 qualities. And then there's other discourses that he shares as well. So I'm going to open up for questions here in a moment, but I thought what I would share with you guys is what you have here is the original words of the Buddha. You have a reference which takes you back to the original source teachings in the Pali Canon. So you can reference this if you'd like to see what the Buddha was talking about before or after this. Then you've got words from me that are helping you understand how to implement this into your day-to-day life and how to get further insight on this. Because the Buddha's teachings are very clear, very concise, and very precise, but it's helpful to have a teacher who's dedicated to their own practice, because there's certain teachings like this that are connected to other teachings. And if you don't understand that that's the case, then you don't necessarily understand this particular teaching. So down here, I'm showing you in other parts of the book series where you can find information on these particular topics. So you can see here with the faculty of energy, I'm explaining where you can find that, and I'm explaining what that actually is so that you understand how to practice that. So do you guys have questions on this particular chapter, 61, persons who are worthy of gifts? This is the 5th discourse out of multiple discourses where he's talking about this. No questions here? Oh, we have a question? Yes, sir.
Good morning. I was curious who for you is somebody who's alive right now who, you might look up to, who you think is a teacher of yours that is somebody that you would be generous to, or, who are some of your teachers that have these 6 traits that you might be generous with?
So for me, I don't have any teachers or any guides. I was able to understand the teachings of the Buddha on my own, which is not something that's a common person is able to do. But for me, I was able to do that. And now what I do is I share those teachings with other people to be able to help them be able to see the truth and be able to experience improvement to the condition of their mind in their life. So where I practice a lot of my generosity is I practice it with the students. I'm constantly sharing the teachings and sharing resources to be able to help students to be able to grow and learn and develop on the path. But prior to me understanding these teachings in the way that I do, I practiced an extensive amount of generosity. I used to have businesses in the USA where I owned some businesses, and I was making quite a bit of money. And there were times where I was owning businesses here in Thailand as well. And during that time frame, I used to practice generosity quite extensively. There were some temples in the US that I used to practice generosity with. I never even went to the temples really. I would just go there every once in a while and just kind of participate in an event, but I didn't learn at those temples because they were all teaching in Thai. But I used to give them about $1,000 a month every single month out of the money that I was making, because I was making about $60,000 to $80,000 a month when I was in the U.S. So I would give about $1,000 a month to this one particular temple. I would give offerings to schools, like grade schools and different events that children were participating in order to help them raise funds for, some particular event or something like this. I used to give away equipment like massage equipment when there was like major catastrophes and natural disasters. There were some massage therapists that were going to help the first responders who were responding to these events. So I donated equipment to allow them to be able to go and take care of the first responders and things like this. So I've practiced a lot of generosity in these ways, but they weren't directly my teachers or people that I've actually learned from. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? No other questions? Okay. So now let's go to the next chapter. This is chapter 62. This is the sixth discourse. Would someone like to read this? Rachel, you're going to read?
Persons who are worthy of the sixth discourse. So too, Badali, when a monk possesses 10 qualities, he is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, respectful salutation, and unsurpassed of merit for the world. What are the 10? Badali, a monk possesses the right view of one beyond, the right intention of one beyond training, the right speech of one beyond training, the right action of one beyond training, the right livelihood of one beyond training, the right effort of one beyond training, the right mindfulness of one beyond training, the right concentration of one beyond training, the right wisdom of one beyond training, and the right liberation of one beyond training. When a monk possesses these 10 qualities, he is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So here again, the Buddha is actually describing an enlightened being. And the way that you know that he's doing that is he's talking about the 10-fold path. Oftentimes people are familiar with the 8-fold path. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha that everybody would need to learn and practice. You would need to know that inside and out in order to be able to make your way to enlightenment. And I share that through the original words of the Buddha and all the books, audiobooks, the courses, the retreats that I share. I help you to be able to learn this with the original words of the Buddha. If you don't learn the 8-fold path with the original words of the Buddha, you wouldn't know what he actually taught and what he didn't teach, and you wouldn't understand the training to be able to train your mind to be able to make your way to enlightenment. Because there's many different resources out there that are going to maybe present what they're describing as the Eightfold Path, but very rarely do you see it's represented with the original words of the Buddha. You need to be able to study with his original words. So that's why I give it away for free so that everybody can see what the Buddha actually taught. but there's something called the tenfold path. The eightfold path is what's actually going to be the individual training that you need to be able to make your way to enlightenment. But by the time you actually get to enlightenment, you're going to be practicing what's called the tenfold path. The eightfold path are these first 8 factors: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. There's actually teachings that you need to be able to understand in detail in order to practice this eightfold path. One of the ways you might think about this is like if you had a speaker system and you had 8 individual dials and you were tweaking these individual dials to get a better and better quality sound out of the speakers. That's what the eightfold path is that you tweak these dials. You basically dial this into your life more and more closely to get a better and better performing mind. And as you're doing that, you're going to see the gradual improvement to the condition of the mind. This eightfold path is a core central teaching that all the other teachings of the Buddha plug into. And when you practice the eightfold path to perfection, you bring your practice up to that, and then you live your life that way for an extended period of time. It's kind of like upgrading the operating system to your mind. If you understand like a computer and upgrading the operating system, when you're on this old archaic operating system, the computer functions, but it doesn't function very well. But then when you upgrade the operating system, initially it's a bit challenging to figure out where all the icons went, where all the settings went. It's a little bit cumbersome initially, but eventually you get up and running on that new operating system and you're like, sweet, this works really well. They should have did this a long time ago. So it's the same thing with your mind. Upgrading your mind to this enlightened 9.0, if we'd like to call it that, right? This eightfold path. When you're upgrading your operating system to this eightfold path, it's a little bit cumbersome. It's a little bit challenging because you haven't done things that way your entire life. And now as you're upgrading your mind, it's a little bit challenging. But then when you get up and running on that, it becomes effortless where you can practice that for an extended period of time. And as you're doing that, this is where your mind and your life is improving and becoming better and better and better. And as you do, you're eliminating those 10 pollutions out of the mind, the 10 fetters. And once you do, through that eightfold path, when you fully purified your mind, you will then be practicing what's called the tenfold path. The tenfold path has 2 extra steps. There's right wisdom and there's right liberation. There's no teaching here like with the eightfold path that you need to specifically be practicing. Instead, right wisdom and right liberation is kind of like a byproduct of having practiced the eightfold path to perfection for an extended period of time. What right wisdom is where you have deep understanding of the path to enlightenment and exactly what the path to enlightenment is. That you don't just believe it, you haven't just intellectually understood it, but you're actually practicing it on a day-to-day basis. That's what right wisdom is, that you deeply understand the path to enlightenment. What right liberation is where the mind's actually completely free. It's liberated. It no longer experiences any discontent feelings. All those feelings that I mentioned, like anger, sadness, frustration, and others, they're no longer experienced in the mind of someone who's practicing the eightfold path to perfection, because then they have right wisdom, that they fully cultivated wisdom about the path, and their mind is completely liberated, completely free, no longer bound up. You don't even experience the slightest ickiness by the time you get to enlightenment, that you'll go 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and your mind's completely peaceful and completely joyful. You'll know your mind's enlightened, but I don't suggest that you ever convince yourself that your mind's enlightened. Just always be growing and developing as a human being. Once you convince yourself that you're enlightened, there's the potential for ego or arrogance or pride or boastfulness to come into the mind. And if those things come into your mind, you're actually not yet enlightened. So you would like to just remain humble and down to earth, training your mind to never convince yourself that you're actually enlightened, and just gradually be improving in day-to-day all the time, developing and growing your wisdom. So here, when the Buddha is talking about one beyond training, that by the time you've actually implemented these factors very closely, you'll be beyond training, meaning there's nothing else for you to learn about the path to enlightenment, that you fully have cultivated activated your wisdom about the path to enlightenment, that you're beyond training. There's other things that in life that you would be able to learn as an enlightened being, but in terms of the path to enlightenment, by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll know the path inside and out, backwards and forwards. You'll know it like the back of your hand. You'll never forget the teachings that it took to actually get to enlightenment. But there's other things in the world for you to learn. By the time you get to enlightenment, your mind's performing optimally. You have focus, concentration, clarity, deep memory. Maybe there's things that you never have actually done that you've always aspired to do, that now that you're enlightened, you would maybe like to do that. Maybe you've always had this idea that you would like to fly a helicopter, but you've never really done it because you didn't think that maybe you could. Maybe your mind wasn't clear enough and focused enough. So maybe you've never done that. But maybe after you got to enlightenment, you're like, well, now that I've got this wisdom and my mind is completely focused and concentrated, now let me go learn how to fly that helicopter, right? There's plenty of other things in the world to learn besides just the path to enlightenment. But this is like a real priority for people who are interested in getting to that point where the mind's performing optimally. And now when your mind's performing optimally, now you'll have the opportunity to be able to do anything and everything that you'd like to be able to do in the world. So the Buddha is talking about an individual who's actually enlightened here, that has these 10 qualities. And when you learn what these 10 things are, you'll be able to observe those in other people, and you'll know that they're actually practicing them closely, and that might be someone that you decide to support. And the reason why is because when you choose to make offerings to that person, you're coming in close contact with this person, and now you can actually ask them questions and gain insight and wisdom to understand what it is that took them to get to enlightenment so that you can actually get to enlightenment too. That's what the Buddha taught, is this ability for these groups of people to come together. These people who are deeply practicing the teachings, given up their worldly life to be able to pursue this enlightened path. And now these people who are aspiring to get to enlightenment, they're coming together and now providing support to this group of people so that they could let go of their worldly life, and now they can actually help these other people get to enlightenment. So the Buddha calls this mutual support, that the ordained practitioners and teachers are supporting the students, and the students might choose to support the actual teachers and the ordained practitioners. And this is how the teachings continue to be shared in the world up to this time. So do you guys have any questions on this particular discourse? The Buddha is sharing about the types of individuals to practice generosity with in order for his teachings to continue in the world. Have a question? It just takes a second once you turn it on.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about the right wisdom, you said it's not just understanding, but also taking to practice. Yeah, that part I didn't really get.
Okay, so there's the intellectual understanding of something. Like, say, for example, when you were growing up, your parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, they might have told you that it's unwise to use drugs and alcohol. And you might have understood that intellectually, that it's unwise to use it. I don't know for sure, but a lot of people, we still do it, right? Because we lack wisdom. We have intellectual understanding of something, but we're not making decisions in our day-to-day life based on that understanding because we still have a lack of wisdom. Oftentimes people refer to this as ignorance or the unknowing of true reality or confusion or misunderstanding. So it's possible for someone to know something intellectually, but they're not actually making decisions through that intellectual understanding because the mind's not yet wise. So in order to get to wisdom, you need to not just understand something intellectually, but you need to be making decisions through that wisdom. For example, using this example of substances, we need to be able to understand that putting something like drugs or alcohol into this body, it's polluting the mind, that now the mind doesn't have mindfulness. You don't have focus, concentration, and clarity. You don't have awareness of your thoughts and ideas, and now you're making unwise decisions. This is why someone might get in a car and they might drive and get into an accident, and now they might kill themselves or kill others. This is the results of our decisions. What we're experiencing in life is the results of our decisions. This is the cause and effect of how we make decisions. And if we make decisions unwisely with a lack of wisdom, it's going to produce unwholesome results or unwholesome karma. But when we make decisions wisely, it will produce wholesome karma or wholesome results. So everything the Buddha is teaching you is to practice discernment or wise decision making, getting to the point where you have wisdom. And the process of doing this starts with intellectual learning, examination, investigation, but then you need to reflect on it to verify whether it's true or false based on your own direct experience. But then you need to practice and make decisions that way. So someone might grow up and they would have been told that it's unwise to use drugs and alcohol. They understand that intellectually. And now they might even reflect on it, and they might see some other aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters having difficulties with substances. They might even see things in the news, but their practice, they're still choosing to do it, not realizing how unwise it is because the mind hasn't yet cultivated right wisdom. They're not actually practicing the teaching. They're not making decisions through that understanding. So in order to get to the point where your mind's fully liberated and fully peaceful, you need to be able to actually cultivate wisdom through intellectual learning, through reflecting to verify whether something's true, but then you need to practice it on a day-to-day basis. And that's where you see the improvement. So that now it's like, it's been 20, 30 years or something like this. Maybe someone hasn't used drugs and alcohol and they can see their mind so much more clear and their relationships are really improving and they're performing better at their work and their profession. When they were using drugs and alcohol, that wasn't the case. So now this person has wisdom because now they're practicing through that intellectual understanding. And now it's not just knowledge, it's actually wisdom. Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to end class here by just thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest in learning and growing and developing on the path. What I do in this particular class is I usually just teach up to about 10:30 or so and then just kind of like say goodbye to you guys. But on Saturday nights, I do this from home where I live stream it. I do actually 10 chapters each Saturday. And oftentimes students come into this program after they've actually learned some of the foundational teachings. This isn't where someone will typically start on their journey to enlightenment. There's other programs and courses to really help you lay a foundation. But oftentimes students don't understand that and they just come into this program, which is fine. You can learn plenty from a program like this, but it oftentimes helps to be able to have all the core teachings. Because as you see, we're in volume 13 here talking about generosity, but you need to know all these other teachings as a foundation to be able to understand why generosity is so important. So I gave you a lot of that background information, but on Saturday nights, oftentimes those students have been learning with me for a while. So we just jump right in and we just get really deep into it. And we study 10 chapters per week. So if you're ever interested in doing that, you can attend those classes on Saturday evening at 9 o'clock. Again, tomorrow morning at 9, we're going to have a class here where you're going to be able to learn the frequently asked questions. There's 11 frequently asked questions that the teachings of the Buddha have, or that students will have about the teachings of the Buddha. So that's going to be shared tomorrow morning at 9 and at 9 p.m. as well. I'm actually leaving tomorrow morning for 2 weeks. I'm going to be going to India and leading a retreat for students going to all the sites of the original locations of the Buddha. But there's going to be a student here that's guiding meditation, and then they're going to show a recording where I've actually taught this topic before at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Usually we have a meditation in the main hall on Sundays at 6:30. We're actually not going to be doing that for the next 2 weeks because I'm going to be gone, but we'll restart that when I get back because I'm going to get back on the 2nd of January. And then from the 3rd onwards of January, that's where we'll have our regular schedule. But also while I'm gone on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. here, we're going to have classes where you guys can come and learn if you like. And then on Fridays, we have our social event where we have Temple Fun Night, where we usually play games and have like a little party. We usually have music playing, we have snacks and stuff like this. You guys are welcome to come to that because that's going to be going on too while I'm gone as well. So this is a community for you guys to be able to come and learn and grow and meet people that are into wholesome things. And you can learn here in Thailand and you can learn when you're at home or traveling, and you can learn through our live stream or our recordings as well. If you need any of the details of that, you can see our bulletin board over there. You can see our website at buddhadailywisdom.com, or you can come talk to me and I'll get you plugged in to the teachings that you need to be able to get really started on this path to training your mind and experiencing the peace and the joy that the Buddha is describing in this enlightened journey to this enlightened mental state. So whatever you do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Perhaps I'll see you next time. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.